Hi, and welcome to Embodying Her, where we explore the gap between perceived reality and our manifested desires, and try to dissect and explore the shadow sides that keep us limited. If you're also interested in astrology, you can watch my astrology channel, which is called 24 Astro. I will link it in the description below. But in this video, I'm thinking of just exploring why I'm doing this video and what's to come as a fundamental ground to understand where I'm coming from and being on the same page as me. My outlook on life is that we are souls incarnated to an egoic body, and during this incarnation we are supposed to experience different themes depending on what your soul agreement is. During this incarnation we're supposed to experience different themes, and with astrology we can actually see those themes. We can initiate a topic and exploration. And if you don't believe it, I would say give it a chance to be convinced as you go, because you don't have to believe. You can just look at it objectively and see if it resonates. And it is kind of like a permission slip in order for you to explore yourself, so you don't have anything to lose. It is kind of like a time commitment though to get into astrology. I would say to first explore your sun sign, rising sign and moon, to get a grip on your soul mission. With that outlook on why we are here, our soul is supposed to engage into the betterment of the human collective as a species, since we have gained consciousness which separates us from other species on our earth. So animals, for example, they have a collective soul and a collective consciousness, but we people have developed separate consciousness in order for us to realize our Christ consciousness, which is Jesus Christ's embodying of love, of total love, and then helping to be a vehicle for love to heal the human species as a whole. So that is like the transcendent goal, that is the enlightened state, and what we are in our own soul expression working towards. So in astrology, for example, your rising sign is your soul expression. So we are a soul, but then we have our ego as well, which is the social mask that we developed during our lifetime. And our ego is not a fluke, it's not a mistake. It is needed for us to remember our oneness, our Christ consciousness, because without suffering we wouldn't get to that point where we feel ultimate bliss and such gratitude towards love. The ego is not it's not making up your total of your being. It's not to the extent what you are, your name, your past experiences, your worrying for the future, your goals. That is a small part of your personality, which is not your full self. And this makes us dual. This makes us this is basically what the unconscious and conscious is. So the conscious, it's a small piece of ourselves. I think the usual percentage is that it's 10% of our active brain, but the rest is the unconscious. And here there are so much to discover. This is where we need to look if we want to reprogram ourselves, which is basically what this channel is about. And the ego's origin is developed through the collective unconscious conscious state, and it's influenced by different powers. It's influenced by historical events. It's influenced by a hierarchical system on how we can rule and coexist everyone all together. So there's a lot of different power influences that shaped our civilization and our co-creation as a species. And we have collectively come up with a way of how we can live in societies that are industrialized and working as a whole to be efficient workers, to receive money, to then put money into the city we live in, for example. That is like, if you think about the political system in your country, that is the rules of how the collective in your country works, on how it has come up with to this point. When you're watching this, that is how in the present, that is the agreed upon rule. And it doesn't mean that everyone agrees, but majority of people agree to it. And it doesn't have to also mean that it's the best way. Most likely it's probably not the best way, but as a collective, that is what the majority has agreed upon. And that is a very clear example of why it is so hard for a lot of people to collectively agree on how you should work in best ways to still remain in freedom for yourself, and in think about every little rule that is needed for a city to run smoothly. The agreed upon like property rules, the how everyone is supposed to get water, how everyone is distributed, rights, like there's so many different things that go into running a entity. Is basically what your country is. Your city is like a subculture of it, as like a small sample of the collective of your country. And this is the current state. But also think about the history of humanity, like how much has happened for us as humans. How, like, think about before we had social media, for example. Now the collective rules have amplified. Everyone is hyper aware, hyper conscious of the social clues, because we can see what is the social context of a country based on their presence in a social media platform. Like, we are so connected nowadays. But think about, like, for 200 years ago, like 1,000 years ago, so many different influences that shaped our conditioning. And a lot has been from religious influences. And since it's the universal thing for a human who gained consciousness, gained the consciousness of cause and effect, which has been the universal thing, that we want to know the purpose of life. We want to have something to explain why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. And that has been a void in humanity. And we've searched for answers everywhere. And then religious ideas have come forth. And that is like a market in itself. It's been so influenced. And people identify with it. And if it's their truth, their ego identifies with their explanation of the universe in a way that it's hard for them to accept that other people don't view life as they do. And then we have wars and different hierarchical system, like leading the different religions. It's so much like history and power struggles, and like think about just like racial awareness, like where we are now compared to like 500 years ago. Think about women being the secondary gender. Like there's so much baggage that shaped our conditioning, and this conditioning has also been passed down through our ancestors as well. So with all that said, we have that collective like conditioning and ancestral traumas from whatever your gender and ethnicity is. You have that kind of baggage, but then you also have your own baggage, the karma that you're experiencing in this lifetime, which is your conditioning from your parents, your friends that you have through your life, your school, your country, the environmental differences, like whichever temperature you have outside. Like temperature really affects different collective groups differently. Like for example, if you live in a place where it's very warm, it will really shape the socialness, like your outgoingness, because you will be outside more. And in contrast, if you live in a very cold place, you will be very inside a lot, and maybe the people as a collective become very introverted, since it's like those things really do shape the collective. So there's so many different factors, and also depending on your soul's intent, the ego will choose different themes to experience, and those will be reflected in whatever sensitivity you have as an ego, and that will also condition you in a way that maybe your sibling won't. But it's very likely that it will be similar as your sibling, as you have the same parents and probably same history and stuff. But with that said, we have the egoic conditioning, and then we have the unconscious primal being inside ourselves that we have with our conditioning repressed in order for us to feel safe. Because our conditioning, if we think about it, what our parents do and what our school does and our like the collective in our country does, is they discipline us with shame or praise, like fear or love, in order to give us a guidance on how to best fit into society with its social context, with its social rules. So it's with good intent, but it's very often to an extreme, since there's so much fear instilled in us, with a fear of us being bad if we do something wrong. We don't want to be isolated from the group. We want to fit in. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted in the group. And with this fear of us not being accepted, since if we identify with the ego itself, only with the ego itself, and think that it's everything we are, we will have this fear of not being compatible. We will be feared of the shame, since it is this harsh, strict disciplinary system in today's society, and has been for a very long time, that if we do something that is not socially accepted, we will be scolded, we will be shamed, so that we don't do that again. And then we work as the collective in a society where we conditioned. So With this said, if we never get presented with the idea that we also have a soul, we also have a unique expression that we offer the world, without these limiting, rooted in fear beliefs that we need to control ourselves, if we just are stuck in that, we will be very anxious, and the soul part of us will be very suppressed and most likely feeling very lacking, since it needs to be expressed. It is a very big part of you, and that can manifest in feeling fears of fear, anxiety, even pain, and also in some cases it can be diseases. So what I want to do in this channel is realizing how we go from the egoic conditioning to allowing more soul expression, being that powerful divine feminine that we are, that every woman is, and working on how we can feel safe in expressing that without the egoic being triggered into fight or flight, and not being triggered so that we feel like expressing that soul part of ourselves that we have suppressed. Whenever the soul expression comes up to the surface, that we feel this fear that if we do show ourselves, if we do expose this part of ourselves, that we are in jeopardy of being isolated from humanity as a whole, since it's been that way for a very long time. And even like the origin of that is a lot to do with the installed fear that we've been programmed with, for the fear of our power, but also there's so many different, like it has a lot to do with religion and also people in power. Yeah, it is, there's so much things that so many factors to take into consideration. We have, for example, the witch's wound, which is the collective fear from men in particular who are scared of the divine feminine, and then use witches or the label witch to put that on women that awoke to their own power and potential, and then install that fear in the collective, and then literally haunted them down and burn them on fire. That is like a collective trauma for the female incarnative, and that has shaped every woman that lives today. Even though it's not something that we deal with now, it has been affected in some of your ancestors before this. So most likely everyone can feel this contact with this witch's wound, some more than others, depending on your purpose in incarnation and so forth. So this channel then will be very focused on allowing ourselves and working on how to self-regulate, and how to do shadow work, how to meditate, do yoga, why we have resistance to doing these types of things. Also have very like chit chats videos where I talk about certain topics to maybe evoke something, initiate something in you. And I want to do this channel because this is something I would like to watch, to just have this desperation and longing for my divine feminine, not having a strategy on how to get in contact with this. Everything on how to embodying our soul's divine feminine nature. And I look very much forward to this. So it will be interesting, and I'll hope you stick around and comment on the videos, on whatever it evokes in you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.